Evening everyone, it is Thursday evening here on the UK and I am reflecting on the Shawn Porter versus Adrien Broner fight. Now I did an initial video on this fight when it was announced. I've had more in-depth thoughts on it, I've followed the build-up and I wanted to do a follow-up vid, perhaps going into a bit more detail. So that is what I'm here to discuss today. I'm drinking a pint of Murphy's Stout, which I would strongly recommend to anyone who's a fan of Guinness. A real decent alternative, and I'm keeping up the alcoholic theme on the channel by cracking into one as I start talking. Now let me tell you, this fight is a very intriguing fight, Porter-Broner. It's a real tough puzzle to crack, and I think people who think it's going to go one way or the other, in a sort of steamroller fashion, are overlooking some of the subtleties at work here. Now, first things first, what I'd say is we're looking at two guys who are very much top 10 fighters. I would class Shawn Porter as a top 10 welterweight, and I would class Adrien Broner as a top 5 light welterweight. I appreciate that it appears that Adrien Broner's future may be at welterweight, not light welterweight. And if that is the case, I think he's already done enough. He's already been a welterweight world champion. He's enough to constitute a top 10 welterweight fighter in my eyes. It's tight, but he is there. Now, welterweight is a stacked division, as we know. There's huge star power. And to see two guys fighting in the top 10 is intriguing. However, these are not two guys there are certain people in the top 10, like One Man One Marquez, Devin Alexander, Robert Guerrero. There are certain of these type of guys who are, let's say, they're in the autumn of their careers, or they're on the slide, or they've taken a few losses recently. These two guys are two guys who are relatively young, two guys who potentially have their biggest fights ahead of them, and two guys with an extreme amount of upside. And this is why this is such an intriguing fight. Not only is it two top 10 guys in the most competitive division out there, but they're also guys with a serious future ahead of themselves, and it's possibly early on in their careers for them to be having a fight of this nature. The other thing is, both guys seem to be training like beasts. They're both taking this very, very seriously. That's particularly relevant to Broner, who we know has turned up to fights before and not been in the best of shape, perhaps has lived their life a bit too much and not taken things too seriously. So both guys looking in excellent physical condition. Boxing Ego did a video earlier on in the week about Adrien Broner looking really sharp in training, looking like he's ripped out and taking things very seriously, which is always good to see. Shawn Porter is a guy we know he turns up in shape. I've seen a few of his training videos. I watched one today on Dante's Boxing Nation, and he really looked like he was in very, very good nick and training very, very hard. So it's good to see these two guys. They're going to turn up. It's going to be no excuses on the training front, and I'm looking forward to it on that side. Now, the first thing I'd like to talk about is Adrien Broner. Put simply, I believe Adrien Broner is one of the most underrated fighters out there. In fact, let me take it a step further. I think in the course of maybe about 24 months, he's gone from the most overrated fighter in boxing to one of the most underrated. Yeah, people forget, but Adrien Broner was very regularly appearing on people's pound-for-pound top 10 lists before he made what in my eyes was a mistake of moving from lightweight to welterweight. However, whilst he didn't look overly good against Malignaggi, and whilst he lost to Maidana, people have forgotten about Adrien Broner, and he's now viewed as this comedic figure. He's now viewed as someone well off the pound-for-pound list. And I think it's gone full circle from him being overrated to him now being underrated. Yeah, Adrien Broner is a very skilled guy in my opinion, and I rate him very highly. I think defensively, whilst there needs to still be a bit more refinement, I think defensively he's very, very sound. Combined with that, he's got an excellent chin and a great heart, as he showed in the Marcus Maidana fight. I've had two concerns with Adrien Broner. I'll touch on the second one later on in this video. The first concern was his punch output. Recently in the John Molina fight, I was very, very pleased with how Broner performed. His punch output was higher, and that was largely through the form of an excellent jab. Broner's a skilled technician. He's got really good fundamentals and basics with his defence, but also with his jab. And if he can keep that jab accurate, and if he can keep it consistent and constant, it's a real weapon. It really is. And the Broner jab is something that is going to be very, very relevant in big fights to come. In addition to that, he punches well to the body. He's got good close range inside the pocket technique. He throws a nice sort of hook uppercut combination in close. And I think Adrien Broner is very, very underrated. I think at £140, some of the names out there, Provodnikov, Matisse, Danny Garcia, I think Adrien Broner could beat those guys. I think he's got the technical ability to expose deficiencies in their game. And I think he's got the heart and the chin and the defence to take the assault of what tends to be a very, very aggressive fighter currently dominating 140. Now, I've heard people saying that Shawn Porter can easily outbox Adrien Broner. Let me say I completely disagree with that. Shawn Porter's a good fighter, but he's not an exceptional boxer. You look at Kell Brook versus Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter was the aggressive, come forward, high volume, all action fighter. Why did he lose? Because he was outboxed. Because he came up against a more accurate guy. He came up against a guy who possibly had better fundamentals. Shawn Porter's a guy who doesn't throw straight punches. He throws wide looping punches that can be telegraphed and can take a while to arrive. Potentially, that could be a damaging trait for a guy like Adrien Broner, against a guy like Adrien Broner, who's got what I would say is an above average defence. So I don't rule Adrien Broner out of this fight whatsoever. As I say, I think he's drastically underrated, and I think Porter is a guy who can be outboxed. And I think Broner's got some real good boxing fundamentals. So I don't rule Adrien Broner out. My worries are, for me, Broner's not a welterweight. He really isn't. And not only is he, I know it's at a catchweight, but not only is he fighting at welterweight, he's also fighting against a very big welterweight in Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter fought at, I think, in the 160s in the amateurs. Believe it or not, he actually beat Olympic heavyweight gold medalist and undefeated pro Alexander Usyk in the amateurs. That's how big Shawn Porter is, So I think that's a concern. We've seen Adrien Broner look fairly dominant at the lower weights. I know there was one or two occasions where he put in a below par performance, but he was a dominant performer in the lower weights. He stepped up to welterweight. He went life or death with Paulie Malignaggi, who Porter squashed. He then lost to Marcus Maidana. So, as an Adrien Broner fan, I wanted to see him concentrate on the 140-pound division. Not only is the talent less at 140 than 147, but I also thought Adrien Broner would suit the division a bit more in terms of size. I don't view him as a big puncher at 147, and I think at 140, not only is there, as I say, not only is it less competitive, but I think he'd be able to use his advantages a bit more at 140. So the fact that it's at welterweight is an initial concern for me as someone who's an Adrien Broner fan, because I thought he'd be better off concentrating in a lower division. There are two other big concerns. The first concern being that the only time Broner lost was against Maidana, a very aggressive come-forward puncher who throws wide shots, and a guy who is all action, all output, big strength. Now, in many ways, Marcus Maidana and Shawn Porter have similarities in their approach, and it is arguable that Shawn Porter could certainly cause similar issues to what Marcus Maidana caused. If there are gaps in Broner's game that Maidana exploited, Porter's going to see that. The evidence of that is on tape, and Porter's got the same attributes to cause similar issues. Stylistically, is it just a wrong matchup for Broner? Is Porter, who's going to be swarming on him, coming forward, not giving him a second to breathe, is that going to be all wrong for him? Very, very possibly. Let me just say, my final concern, and this is what I was referring to earlier on in the video when I said I had two main questions over Broner's capability. I do think Porter can be outboxed. However, to outbox him, I think you need two things. one, you need to have better straight punches than him, which Adrien Broner definitely has. But two, I think you need the ability to move around him, to circle him, to not be cornered by him. You need fast feet and you need active feet. And Adrien Broner is fairly stationary. Yeah, he's not a guy who's going to be running circles around Shawn Porter, in my opinion, which I think is an issue. I really do think is an issue. I think the way Adrien Broner fights and the way he's so stationary, he doesn't want to get into a war with Shawn Porter. But I don't think he's going to be as strong physically. He's not as big a man as Kell Brook on the inside. So I think if he's not going to be able to live with Shawn Porter and close down the Porter inside game, then he's going to have to move. And I don't see that to his game. So right now, whilst I'm a huge fan of Adrien Broner, and whilst I think out of the two, Adrien Broner perhaps has the higher upside, I'm inclined to side slightly towards Shawn Porter. Styles make fights, we know this. And my concern is that the style to beat Porter is firstly to be a genuine 147 pounder, and secondly to move. You know, to outbox him and to move around him. I don't think Broner brings that movement or that size to the equation. Now, Broner is a better technician and a better boxer who throws straighter punches than Porter in my eyes. I don't rule Adrien Broner out, but I don't think Broner is going to be able to close down the relentless assault of Porter like Brook did, because I don't think he's as strong and as big as Brook. And I don't know whether you can outbox Shawn Porter if you don't move. So I'd be slightly inclined to lean towards Shawn Porter on this one, because looking at how to beat Adrien Broner, you've got the Marcus Maidana blueprint. Looking at how to beat Shawn Porter, you've got the Kell Brook blueprint. And I think it's more likely that Porter will mirror Maidana. That's more likely than Broner mirroring Brook, in my eyes. Now, there is one other factor which we haven't talked about. That's the great intangible in this fight, the elephant in the room, which is the catch weight. We've talked about Shawn Porter fighting at higher weights in the amateurs. We've talked about him fighting Alexander Usyk in the amateurs. How's he going to respond to having to drain another 3 pounds to 144? For a fighter who relies on work rate, aggression and constant activity, could draining down to that low really affect him on the night? It's possible. And as much as I like Adrien Broner, as much as I do see him having a future potentially in the pound for pound lists, I do think it would be good for his career to drop to 140. You know, quite frankly, I see him running through the main names at 140 right now. The only person I think gives him trouble at 140, and the only person I'd take over him at 140 is Terence Crawford. But at 147, the water's a lot deeper. The talent pool is a lot stronger. And I think it's unfortunate that Broner is not making the effort to get down there. Let me know your thoughts. It's a tight fight. I'm intrigued by it. I'm very much looking forward to it. Both guys are live and I respect both guys. But based on the Maidana Broner fight, based on AB's lack of movement, based on AB's lack of size, I'm inclined to go for Shawn Porter. A guy who can be outboxed, but a guy who I think has the style to beat Adrien Broner at this weight class. Let me know your thoughts. As always, thanks for watching.